Well, it's indeed my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Larry Jennings. I consider Larry one of my best friends, a real spiritual pillar for this church and for a lot of us. Larry, as many of you know, his career, his life's work has been that of a funeral director. And he's in a situation where he every week, and he continues to do this even though he's retired now, but every week he meets people that are going through just a very, very difficult experience. And what it's so important to have someone that you feel like really cares about you, and Larry is the man. And so without further ado, let's invite Larry up to share his talk today. Have a good one.
Thank you, President. Yeah, here, take this with you. Good morning. Thank you for that warm welcome. Today I'm going to do something a little different. We'll talk about death. You've heard me speak about that before. But today I want to take you on a funeral service I was recently part of that really touched me. And at the end of that day, I sat down and wrote this talk that I'm about to share with you. And I hope there's something in here for each of you. I was asked to accompany that day a young man to Arlington National Cemetery. As a funeral director, I have witnessed and seen many services there, but this one struck a nerve deep inside and wakened within me a desire to share this story with you. This day began as normal, as I dressed and readied myself for a day's work. When I arrived at the funeral home, I found the young man who I would be accompanying to his final resting place. He was in a simple wooden casket covered with our nation's flag. I began by praying for him. I thanked him for his service as a Navy SEAL. He had died in a tragic accident training after surviving many countless deployments. As I prayed for his wife. I prayed for his children, his parents, his brothers and sisters with whom he served. I asked that the pain of their loss be lessened by the love and the memories that he left behind. I prayed his crossing over had been a happy one without fear, and I prayed that he had experienced the welcoming love of our Creator as he returned to his home. I thought about that prayer when I finished and thought to myself how much I had grown and how much I have learned about the mystery of death. In this prayer, there was a sense of grief for those left behind, but not for him. I have come to understand that our lives never end, and his soul had only finished a chapter in his book. That book resides in the Hall of Records, where each of his lives have been recorded. Yes, I felt a sadness in his leaving this world, but I couldn't help but be thankful and wish that he had lived a life that had fulfilled his purpose and brought him joy. I then left that room and prepared to leave for Arlington. When a Navy SEAL passes, it is a large event that touches many and leaves an impact. I first met 6 Virginia State troopers who would escort me to the cemetery. We discussed how and where our handovers would take place as the escorts would change as we drove to Arlington, 200 miles north. In total, they had 18 troopers who would ultimately take us to the cemetery. I then met with the Patriot Guard, who would also join the procession. Finally, I met the Honor Guard that would follow us and the escort who would ride with me. Each of the honor guards were member of a SEAL team, and as much as they tried to man up, I was pleased to see them grieve openly and release their pain. Releasing that pain is so important and would enable them to heal. In that moment, I was reminded that we are all connected, and because of that connection in spirit, I could feel their pain, but I also could feel their love. Feeling their love brought me closer to my connection to God. I paused and sent unconditional love to each of them through the power of the Creator who is a part of me. Soon, we had everything in place, and the honor guard placed him in his casket in the rear of the funeral coach. I slowly closed the door and went to the driver's seat to start our journey. The state police cleared the highway in front of me, and I began my drive to Arlington. I talked to the escort riding next to me, a master chief and friend of the man who was now directly behind us. He told me how much he cared for him. He told me that they had served on many missions together, and he told me how he had been a mentor to all the new members of their team. He would miss him and would continue to look after their family. As I said before, I look for connections that can't be seen but rather are felt. I understood that he felt I was someone safe to talk to and to share his feelings with. An important step for healing. And again, it strengthened my understanding of the unseen energy that I felt passing between us. Soon we were traveling in the outside lane of I-64, moving at 80 miles an hour as the troopers cleared all traffic from our pathway. The escort riding with me asked if he minded if he tried to sleep. Of course, I said yes, as he must have been exhausted. As I continued to drive, I wondered what his dreams would be. As we each know, dreams are a window to our soul. Paul Solomon tells us in a reading that our dreams give us an opportunity to grow and to connect with our Creator. I have always envisioned sleeping as a way for my soul to escape the confines of my body, where it would be free to experience itself in its true form, free to talk to those who have crossed through the veil, free to be with my angels and guides, and free to be with my Creator, my source. I am one who rarely remembers my dreams, so when I do, I pay attention because I understand that something has occurred that has a deep meaning for me. I can only hope that whatever the man sitting next to me was dreaming about would bring him peace and bring him understanding. Perhaps on a soul level, they were together again. After a few short hours, we arrived at the cemetery. This place always resonates within me a feeling of humility every time I pass through its gates. Each headstone tells a story of the person below it. Many of them have served our nation with pride and dignity to the uniforms they wore. When our time came, we were led to the graveside with the family following us. As we approached, we were met by over 500 women and men in uniform, standing in perfect ranks, and as I passed, they saluted the man and the flag I was carrying. They held that salute till the family passed by. Then they stood at attention as we brought the family out of their cars and gathered them to begin the long walk to the grave following their loved one. I then opened the rear door of the coach, adjusted the flag, and moved the casket forward so the bearers could easily lift him. They carried him to his grave, and as everyone saluted again as the casket and the flag made its final journey to its resting place. The family was seated, and the two Navy chaplains spoke words of comfort to the family as everyone gathered. As a final gesture, the Catholic chaplain sprinkled holy water on his casket, speaking these words, "O God, by whose mercy the faithfully departed find rest, bless this grave and send your holy angel to watch over it." As I looked around the graveside, my thoughts imagined an angel standing guard over it. Then I looked into the faces of those in the ranks, and I wondered how many of these young sailors were thinking in their own mind, this could have been me. Times like this will make each of us question our own mortality. None of us are immune to these thoughts, and I could feel their pain. When we witness a ceremony like this, we all know in our hearts that we too will someday die. We too will cross into the light, leaving behind our own legacies. Honors would now be rendered as the firing squad fired 3 volleys and the sound of taps echoed through the cemetery that brought tears to so many. The flag was folded and presented to his wife. A second flag was folded and given to his parents, followed by 2 more. One for his 7-year-old daughter and one for his 5-year-old son. At this moment, one couldn't help but feel the emotion coming from deep within. Raw grief is difficult to witness and hard to experience. Over the years, I have found my greatest coping mechanism isn't simply swallowing hard, but rather to understand death and strip away its mystery. And understand what it is, and understand not to fear the moment, but rather embrace it and love it. Through this understanding comes peace. All of us, I believe, understand that we are so much more than this body. Our soul was created to live forever, and however we cross over it, be it from a military training exercise or from old age, it is not done. I can remember walking into a residence in the middle of the night after a man had succumbed to cancer. When I arrived there, I spoke to the family before taking him into our care. I watched as the family said their final goodbyes. Then they chose to leave the room while we would take this man into our care. The son was last to leave, and he kneeled beside his father's bedside and whispered into his ear. Then he left the room. That moment, I watched his father's soul rise from his body. And as I watched it, it was as if I was seeing the shape of the man rise, but now it was as if I was looking through shimmering water. His soul floated upwards with ease, and I could see clearly in front of me, and I could see clearly through it. His soul quickly then moved towards me, paused for a moment, and then continued upward and disappeared. I've told you of this story before, and looking back at this probably 25 years ago, I know that this was a moment for me to see and experience so I could have a better understanding of death and its mysteries. This was a part of my learning and a part of what I have been asked to share with others who would be able to understand. This was confirmation that life goes on and that our souls have a purpose. In that moment, that soul chose to teach me by allowing me to see it as it left the body. The first time I visited the Hall of Records using the Paul Solomon 7 Terrace meditation in our upper room, I watched as my book floated before me. The pages stopped, and as it stopped, I was immediately transported back into the medieval times in England, where I watched two knights on horses in full armor racing towards each other, jousting. I was an observer, but I was fully aware that one of the riders was me. As they raced forward, I watched and saw myself impaled by the opposing knight. In the exact moment of this happening, I experienced and watched as my soul left its body. There was no pain, there was no shock, as the soul simply left and disappeared. Again, not only confirmation that the soul lives, but confirmation of reincarnation, for this book contained all of my past lives. And that day I witnessed 7 of them. What really struck me witnessing this life was the fact that I felt no pain after suffering a horrific death. Also, when the soul left, it felt no attachment. The soul wanted to return home. There was only peace. We all know that peace. Each of us has experienced our own physical deaths in past lives. Our soul is immortal, and who knows how many more pages will be added to our books. All these thoughts went through my mind as I stood at that grave in Arlington National, and I knew in my heart that his soul left at the moment of his passing and returned to his home. As the service ended, all of the Navy SEALs formed a line to honor their brother in a tradition that they call pinning the casket. Each of them removed their trident medals, the medal each of them wears signifying that they are Navy SEALs. They removed it from the uniforms, placed it on the casket, and then with their fists they pounded into the wood. One after another, they leave this honored symbol with their brother. As they pass by one, pounding that trident into the wood, the sound is something that I will never forget. This is done showing their respect for their fallen brother. They then salute and walk away. Soon I found myself alone, driving back to Virginia Beach, and as I drove, I felt blessed to have been of service to this family and to be able to witness this ceremony. Several years ago, I gave a talk I called The View from a Hearse, the 45 years of experiencing a close-up view of death that has impacted my life in ways that I'll never truly understand. As I reflect on these years, I believe I have fulfilled my life's purpose, a purpose of service, charity, and teaching others. On a personal level, I know and realize there is still so much more to learn and so much more to share. I hope that this talk I'm giving today and sharing with you helps you to connect through my experiences and better understanding of life and death. Deep within, we are all connected to each other, and my experience is yours. Somehow, being around death has opened portals to me where I can allow my thoughts to reach out to others who have crossed over. During these moments, I have been able to receive the thoughts of those who have died. This is something that does not happen unless I allow it to. They often have had a message to bring back to their families. They seem to find it important for their families to understand that they are fine and doing well. These messages bring comfort to those who have left here. There is comfort in knowing that your loved one is safe and has returned to their home. Some quickly move through the veil, yet others, perhaps with a deeper connection here, sometimes remain a little longer, making sure that everyone is okay. The power of our love is a strong bond. Once these souls understand that love that they have will cross over with them, they cross through the veil in peace. Now that I'm retired and only occasionally work, I have felt less connected to those who have died. Less connected, but with all that I have experienced and witnessed, I feel fortunate to have unraveled what we call the mysteries of death and dying. I have learned to accept that the life I am leading is now only another stepping stone in my journey. When you understand and appreciate the journey you are on, your fears disappear and they're replaced by love. I purposely chose not to connect to the young man I drove to Arlington National Cemetery. Rather, I chose to simply accept and understand that he incarnated here at a time with a greater purpose. His leaving this world impacted every life he touched. Through his death, I believe each of these people have had an opportunity for growth and understanding. Even us here at the fellowship today, listening to my experience. The emotion and the love that we feel brings us all together in the oneness we share with the Source. These experiences have taught me about death, but more importantly, they have taught me how to live. Death is always a companion to life and its change. It is a part of the universal life cycle, life, death, and rebirth. Understand this about living. We are born into a world with a page of our life unfolding before us. God has given us free will to choose what we will do with this gift. Listen to your heart for guidance, for it is there that God manifests itself in each of us. Trust in that voice that resonates within. You will know that voice, as that voice is the voice of love. It is not the voice of fear. It is not the voice of judgment. There is no greater joy than living your life and accepting everything as a gift from the Creator. Accept everything that comes your way without fear, and accept the love the Source has for each of you. Go in peace. Thank you. Thank you.